Today we're going on a bike commute way over there in two different ways. The first way will be muscle power. The second way will be assisted. Let's see how it goes. So I'm in Vancouver, and the first part of, let's just call this a commuting challenge, starts here in Lonsdale Quay in North Vancouver. And then I'm heading over the harbor into and then across downtown Vancouver because I want to see this dude chilling. Right now, I'm on a pretty great greenway called the Spirit Trail, which is identified with these cool markings that pay homage to the Squamish First Nation, which is the land that I'm on now. That's great on its own, but I also love a branded bike route. Cycling routes need better marketing. Okay, I'm heading now toward Lionsgate Bridge, which will get me over the inlet and which you 90s kids might recognize from the video game Need for Speed. Also, I'm Tom, and this is Shifter. Please consider subscribing, becoming a member, or checking out my course on bike commuting. I just added a bunch of new content on e-bikes and cargo bikes, and there's a new lower priced starter pack to get you going. Okay, this feels like a pretty good place to stop. Why here? Well, the views are nice. I'm feeling great after I got over the hump of the bridge, and bridges are cool, and riding your bike over them just feels great, especially when you never know how much car traffic there's going to be. And that's part of what I'm doing here today. It's sort of like the urban math of transportation. I started at Lonsdale Quay and made it to this point in, a few minutes, much faster than if I was to walk, much more predictably than if I was in a car, because these car lanes regularly back up with traffic. Plus, you get the view. So these are all factors to consider when you're thinking about your own commute. And that's what I mean about the math. These are all part of the equation we all have to make on our commutes, and that's what I'm setting out to discover today. All right, let's keep going. Okay, into Stanley Park. I mean, this is pretty great. One of the great things about bike commuting is that you can actually get into and feel nature a lot of times. And this isn't just a little side benefit. There are pretty significant positive physical, mental, and emotional impacts of this kind of commute. A recent study in the Annals of Agriculture and Environmental Medicine, for example, found that while car commutes are overwhelmingly rated as the most stressful, cyclists actively use their commute as a coping mechanism for emotional self-regulation. The fatigue and sensory engagement actually causes people's minds to relax, allowing riders to process anger and daily tensions. That ride home can be just a great way to unwind. There's also the multimodal paradigm, which highlights the psychological differences between transportation modes. It notes that while cars tend to trap commuters in a space that feels very isolating, multimodal cycling provides an embodied engagement with the environment to basically convert what they call lost time into mentally restorative, meaningful time. In other words, that time you waste in your car commute is put to your own personal benefit on a bike commute. So we're in downtown Vancouver now, and I'm pretty lucky that my route through downtown is almost completely on safe, separated bike lanes. But I know that's not the case everywhere. A lot of cities don't have a lot of bike infrastructure, and in a lot of cases it's pretty piecemeal. It's a disconnected mess of lanes here and there that doesn't get you where you need to go. And that makes me worry, because I think people in those cities, if they're not feeling safe on their entire route, they're not even going to consider a bike. It won't even enter their mind that the bike can be part of their transportation options. And that's kind of what the test here today is if you can add your bike to other transportation modes, you can really open up more options for yourself. Okay, we basically rode right through downtown Vancouver and came out the other side. Now we're in a more residential part of the city, the kind of place where people actually live. But still, look at these modal filters that make life better for me on a bike. All right, we made it, and here is the dude chilling. Okay, we made it to the destination. So this was basically a made-up commute. If I hadn't stopped to blab several points along the way, it would have taken me about an hour, I think, and it was a pretty good ride. I mean, easy, fun commute. I feel great. My body feels good. All the good things about bike commuting I got today. But this is where the second part begins. So I'm basically going to do the same thing in reverse. But instead of riding my bike the whole way, I'm going to do a multimodal commute. I'm going to use my bike mixed with transit and get to the same destination and just compare how things happened, how it went, compare the experience. And the point here is to see if adding your bike is a way of superpowering your transit commute. So let's give it a go. Okay, now one of the first things to think about when it comes to multimodal commuting is the potential for what planners sometimes call the first mile, last mile problem. Transit is great, but getting to the train station in the morning or from the bus stop to the office at the end of the ride can be a real impediment if it's a long distance. From my starting point here, beside the dude chilling to the train station, it's about a 20-minute walk. If it's 20 more minutes at the other end of the transit line, that's 40 extra minutes of commute time. A bike can probably take that down to 10 minutes or less. but the transitions have got to be smooth. So that's kind of the real test here. Now, if you live in a city with spotty bike infrastructure, which let's face it, is probably most of us, then the potential of transit to skip over the areas that have sketchy or non-existing bike routes or gaps in the bike network is pretty great. Okay, we're at the train station, and just take a note at bike parking. You could leave your bike here if you want to, and you could still benefit from the multimodality, if that's a word, but we're going all in on this one, so the bike is coming with me. This is also an illustration of how good bike share programs can be a huge power boost to commuting and transportation. In a city with a robust bike share network, you can just leave the bike near the train station and pick up another bike at the other end of the train stop. In the best cities, bike share programs are integrated into transit, even in the payment systems. So you can just use your train card to rent a bike. Sadly, Vancouver is not here yet because the bike share system is pretty patchwork across the region and hasn't had the right investment to truly make it work. Maybe someday. While we're on the train, let's talk about cost. Of course, a bike, assuming you already own one, is the cheapest option. It's basically free if we don't cost the cost of the bike, because the cost of a bike is just the admission fee to a better life. And so you should have one anyway, right? Okay, there's still a cost, but amortized over years of commuting, that will ensure the cost of bike commuting is really low. Now, the cost of a bike transit multimodal commute are only slightly higher. Transit in most cities is pretty affordable again. And either way, both are astronomically more affordable than the cost of a car commute. According to this online travel cost calculator that I use all the time, that this kind of commute would cost about 8 cents per kilometer on a bike, would cost me about 11 cents per kilometer for transit, and about 70 cents per kilometer for driving. If you include societal costs like economic and environmental as well, the total trip would cost by bike 30 cents, by transit $12.90, and by car a whopping $34.80. Okay, transferring now from the SkyTrain to the C-Bus. Now, I've never actually taken the C-Bus in Vancouver before, so I have no idea how this is going to go. Broken elevator, of course, but I survived the escalator, made my way through the terminal. Here's an elevator that actually works. And another cyclist, so maybe I'm not totally crazy in doing this. There's other people doing it as well. This friendly guy held the door open for me on my bike as I entered the waiting area. The C-Bus pulled in quite quickly, got chatting with some other people on bikes. So this is pretty common to take your bike on the C-Bus like this. I found my place. Okay, while we're crossing the harbor, I want to talk about another idea that transit planners like to look at, something called catchment area, or the walkshed. That's the distance most people will walk to access transit, and ideally it's within about a kilometer or half a mile, maybe a 10 to 15 minute walk. But a report by the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority found that if you ride a bike, that increases the distance you can cover significantly in the same amount of time. The bike shed area you can cover goes up to 3 miles or about 5 kilometers. Factor in an e-bike and you're up to 5 miles or 8 kilometers. That means in a dense city, that could expand transit access to thousands of people. And if you're in a city where the transit system doesn't quite reach as far as it should, and again, that's probably most of us here in North America, this is another way that a bike can benefit your transit commute. Disembarking the C-Bus, that's also a pretty smooth process. And we're up and riding again, almost at the end. Okay, we're back where we began. And let's review. So the pure bike commute was fun. I got some exercise. We got some nature time. Bikes are just so efficient. They're built for cities. They're just a great way of getting around the city. And I'm kind of a bike guy, so I like the feeling of riding and I like the energy that I got. The cons, it was definitely slower. I'd say maybe 15 to 20 minutes slower over the total distance compared to the multimodal commute. I got a little bit sweaty, especially going over that bridge. So that's a consideration as well. And it took energy. I mean, I was pretty tired by the end. So that could be a pro or a con, but in this case, we'll put it as a con. As for the multimodal commute, it was definitely faster. It was a little less affordable, still pretty affordable, but less affordable than the bike commute. It requires a lot more sort of logistical load, hopping from one mode to another. Although if you do that a few times, I think it would become second nature. And for me, I'd also say it was less fun. I mean, I like transit, I like trains, but sitting there on the train or the C-Bus is just not as enjoyable to me as it is out there moving, getting around and enjoying the world around you. But this wasn't necessarily a competition between them. The point here is just to show that both are viable transportation options, and I think cities need to think about this kind of thing when they're doing their transit planning. having multiple options available to people like this just makes the whole system more efficient. It's better for people. It makes it more resilient in case something goes wrong. It's just better in so many different ways. And taking a step back, I think what we learned today is that bikes and transit can be best friends. Maybe it's time that you introduce them to each other in your life. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.